We got Mo coming up.
Thank you. Is that pigeon still there? That thing's it's a spy. Watch it. Watch it. I don't usually have written notes, but I wanted to make sure that I got everything correct today. So first off, good evening, everyone. Make sure I get that out there. Thank you all for being here. I'm Mo Goldman, and before I introduce our guest, I want to humbly ask that we all take a moment to silently think about the lives taken by agents of force. Lives such as Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and the many, many others whose lives have been taken due to the illegal and unconstitutional acts of an oppressive government. So let's just take a moment and think about that. Thank you. These are some scary times we're living in. But as Jen Budd is going to discuss, this is nothing new and has been a growing and calculated crisis for decades. It is just that we are now seeing it happening across the interior of our country and in real time. People are hopefully waking up and realizing that this is not just a border issue, it is a much greater problem. Jen is the face of courage in a time where we need more people like her.
Yeah.
As a former Border Patrol agent, she is willing to speak up while many won't. She uses her voice to protect others from abuse by the government. She is exactly the sort of person we should all be listening to and learning from right now in this moment. I am the grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I brought with me, and if you want to see it up close, this is the badge that my grandfather, Morris Klein, had from Buchenwald. And the little red upside down triangle designated him as a political prisoner. And this badge motivates me to work every day for those who are marginalized and being held by an oppressive government. And what I admire and why I feel a strong connection to Jen is that she is not going to let the government silence her. They have tried and they failed, right? So far. I learned at a young age what it meant when people say silence in the face of hatred is complicity. Not only hatred, but cruelty. And I learned that through my grandparents and the stories that they told me and the harrowing journey that they had to survive and allow me to be here in front of you today. If it wasn't for people like Jen who actually stepped up and spoke out and actively assisted in the liberation of the concentration camps, I would not be here with you. And for that, I am forever grateful that people like Jen exist.
Yeah.
And I have dedicated my own career to trying my personal best to be on the decent side of history. Thank you. Jen doesn't have to be doing this. She doesn't have to be here today, but she's here because she gives a shit about others. She cares about people that she will never meet and never know. Her voice is important, and her experiences are even more significant. Jen will not back down at a time where we need fighters. She is an inspiration. She is an author of the memoir, and I suggest and highly recommend that all of you get this book if you have not. Against the Wall, My Journey from Border Patrol Agent to Immigrant Rights Activist. She also has been recently profiled in the HBO documentary Critical Incident, Death at the Border, which focuses on the 2010 death of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas, an undocumented Mexican immigrant who died while in custody at the border and the subsequent cover-up that occurred afterwards in her investigation. It is a must-watch. I highly recommend it, and try to catch it before it ends up getting scrubbed. I think she'll talk a little bit about that. So let's give a warm Southern Arizona, well, not that warm right now, but warmer than the rest of the country, to Jen White.
Before I hand this over to Jen, I just wanted to let our Spanish speakers know, los que hablan español, hay interpretación, ¿ok? Así que encuentren los audífonos, creo que por acá, en el fondo, para que escuchen todo bien y entiendan perfectamente bien, ¿ok? Gracias.
Okay. I think I'll be okay. Stand on this side. Okay. Well, I'm so excited to see so many faces. So many of my talks are small. So many of my talks are to only people who work on the border with migrants, and it's nice to see young people here too, because I don't often see a lot of young people. I'm used to seeing Leno's face all the freaking time. So. Man comes to my house. So I think it's important to tell you just a little bit about me and how I ended up on this journey. So I was born in 1971, grew up in Alabama. We were not talking about immigration in Alabama back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Certainly us white people were not talking about that. And I was raised mostly in a liberal household. My parents always voted Democratic, but honestly, I never even heard of the Border Patrol. And when I graduated from college, I went to Auburn University, War Eagle, and I came back home to live for a little bit. I recognized how traumatic my childhood had been. I'd grown up with a mother who was a severe alcoholic, and she tended to beat my naked back with my father's leather belts for a lot. So I suffered a lot of trauma as a child. And school was an outlet for me. I put myself through college. My parents didn't help me. But after I graduated, I was headed to law school. I was taking my LSAT entrance exams. And I started having what I recognize now as PTSD, being back home with my mother and being back in that environment. And I thought I was just going crazy, but this thing called the Border Patrol was hiring in the mid-90s, right, with the Clinton push during the crime bill. So that's what I was hired under. And the only thing I knew about the Border Patrol was what the agents themselves, the recruiters, had told me. And they said it's like the FBI, but it's on the southern border, and you get to ride horses and wear cowboy hats and drive four wheels. And as an Alabama girl, I was like, well, shit, yeah, right? So, but the thing is like, I was also always knew that I was a lesbian since I was a young girl. So getting away from my family, they did not approve of that, and getting out of Alabama and being sent to San Diego, really shit, yeah, right? And start my life, right? And I would say at the time, obviously I was born in American exceptionalism and still believed in that. And in the time I was born, I did not think I had racist problems. The majority of my education about those issues came from my mother, who did teach me a lot about justice and taught me a lot about the civil rights movement of the 1960s and so forth. And so I joined the Border Patrol. And women in the Border Patrol have only existed since 1975. They were forced to allow us to come in. Our very first Latina agent, Ernestina Lopez, was raped at the academy by her classmate. And when she complained, she was fired. And that started the hazing of female Border Patrol agents. And there's only 5% of us. They call us the fierce 5%. Like we're tougher than other women. But the truth is most of us have no support. I had no family support being a gay woman. My classmate who graduated with me was a married woman with a husband who was beating her and had 3 kids. She was trying to get away from that. And so we tend to be the women that, Either you voluntarily have sex with your instructors, or you get raped. And so in my 3rd month at the academy, I was raped by my classmate. But I had already been told, this is 20 years, literally 20 years after Ernestina. And they're still doing it today, still doing it. There's a case from 2019, another woman that it happened to, and many others that won't come forward. And sometimes it's more of a sexual assault, sexual harassment, but there's not a single woman in the Border Patrol that hasn't suffered from that. And when there are no women, the small men get it, let me tell you. And you're supposed to shut up. That's your job as a woman in the United States Border Patrol. So I ask you to think about this. If they think that it's okay to rape the women of the United States Border Patrol and keep it secret, then what do you think they're doing to the migrant women and the children? And some of the men, let's be honest. And in fact, it is such a robust rape culture that the motto of the Border Patrol is honor first. And they talk about it constantly. They say it at the end of conversations when they leave each other. It's almost like, and I don't mean to make this comparison, but it's like during Nazi Germany when they would say Heil Hitler every time they entered a room and left a room. That's how they do it. But the men, when they're alone, they don't say honor first. They say on her first. And this comes from the upper management. It comes from the very lowest of the agents. The trainees that are in the academy are doing a lot of the raping. They will cover for them. But they also learn this from their instructors. And on graduation night, they play a game called the Game of Smiles. And women are warned not to go to it, but some women go to it. And they drug their drinks and they push them under the table. And you're told to give the agents and the instructors oral copulation, and whoever smiles loses, and it's a drinking game. And when they're done with her and she passes out, then they gang rape her. So if you choose to stay, that's what you have to go through to survive that. That's what makes you tough. But back in the day, I didn't understand the systemicness. I thought it was a one-off. It just sounded ridiculous that this was going on a federal law enforcement training base to me, and to the other women. And so I just thought I just need to get out to my station. I had nowhere to go, no family to support me. And so they sent me to Campo, California, which is the furthest east mountains in San Diego County. So it's high desert. We get not as hot as you guys get here, but somewhat hot, and people die from the heat. And then we also have people die from the snow. They freeze to death. So there's a lot of death in Campo, even before deterrence started. And I was fortunate enough to get to that station before Operation Gatekeeper got there with the fences and stuff. So I knew the community beforehand. I knew the kids that lived on the south side in the little town out in the middle of nowhere. I knew their grandparents lived on the north side, and sometimes their cows came across and we'd help them get their cows back and all this other stuff. It was a different kind of relationship that we had with people who lived directly on the south side during that time. Not necessarily a relationship that you see between Border Patrol and people who live on the Mexican side near ports of entry, but a relationship you see more further out in the middle of nowhere where you're forced to rely on each other for help. And I would say if it always stayed that way, I probably would have stayed a Border Patrol agent my whole life. But then they kept bringing in more agents, and they brought in that stupid wall. And that's when things became more violent. And then as the agents came, more and more agents came, it became more and more violent. And I eventually, in the academy, they teach us that there's a legal way to come across it, and they just choose not to do it. They also teach us racial epithets to call the migrants who cross illegally. We call them tonks, T-O-N-C or T-O-N-K. And that is because over 50% of our agents are Latino. And they tell us white agents, can't be using the word spick, you can't be using the word beaner, you need to use the word tonk, because they've never heard that before. So they will not realize how racist it is. So they can join and be part of the racism. And that makes them feel like they're part of the green family, as they call it. And so what I found in Campo, they thought I would quit. I was the only woman there. And they didn't think I could handle the hiking, but I'm very introverted and I like being alone, so I loved it. And the truth is I would arrest 20 to 30 men every night, 3 times to 4 times a night, depending on how far I had to track them through the mountains. And no undocumented migrant, nobody who's crossed illegally ever tried to rape me, or did rape me. And they didn't treat me like crap, like the people that I worked with, because that follows you when you complain about that. It follows you to your duty station. And they try and fire you, and they give you all sorts of bad positions all by yourself and try and get you to leave. But I came from a lot of trauma, so this was like, whatever, nothing new, right? And I didn't need their friendship. Like I said, I'm very introverted and so forth. I just wanted to do a good job. But what happened in Campo is then you end up sitting for hours waiting for somebody with transport to come and help you get the migrants into a van to go take them and process them. That's hours worth of sitting on a rock in the middle of the night, sharing cigarettes, sharing tortillas, sharing water, and learning their stories. And this was not the story I was told in the academy. Because as my Spanish improved, but more so as I would catch groups that had English speakers in it, I would start to learn. And I talk about one guy in my book, we're on the top of a mountain. The group's given up, they've lost their ride, so we're just sitting around for hours, smoking and eating and drinking water and stuff. And the guy says to me, do you all treat Canadians like this? And I'm like, my official white response is like, oh, come on, man, you know, right? And I say, well, it's the law. And he said, well, slavery was the law. And I'm like, ah, right? And he said, do you treat Canadians like this? And I said, no, we do not track them like animals. Because that's what I'm doing when I'm out there. I'm tracking them like they're an animal. And he says, why do you think that is? And I said, the white person in me wants to say it's because you're uneducated. But he had already told me he had a college degree just like mine. A 4-year just like mine, right? So we have the same education level. And then I finally said, you know, I guess it's because of the color of your skin. And he was like, oh, so you can tell the truth. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell the truth. We end up eventually, training comes with a van for transport, and I get everybody down, because that was back in the day where if somebody fell and hurt themselves, you kind of you could be held responsible for them getting hurt. Not nowadays. And I personally would feel bad about it. And so we got everybody down, and he turns around to say something to me, and the trainee goes to punch him because he's getting, and I'm like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And he comes up to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, you're better than this, and you know that. And he said, I want you to think about it. And he gets back in the van and closes the van, and the trainee's like, what the fuck was that about, right? To let a talk to me like that. Because they consider them to be subhuman. I did, obviously, at some point in my life. And I said to him, just right on cue, he's just a fucking stupid talk. And I walked away, and I went and sat in my truck, and I became very angry at him for calling me out for my racism. And I was angry because I knew he was right, and because I had been taught much better. So fast forward, eventually I understand that the majority of the agents I'm working with, I can look around, there are all these agents sitting with me in a muster, and I know this guy's on trial for rape, that guy's pedo, this guy is that, this woman's that, blah, 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 blah. But the people that I'm sitting on the top of a mountain with every night who have nothing are offering to share their food with me and telling me what a gente I am because I don't beat them and because I'm nice. And eventually I end up at San Diego Sector Headquarters as a senior patrol agent. I only served 6 years before I resigned, right before 9/11. I do not get a pension from the Border Patrol. I do not get any money from the Border Patrol. And I'm thankful I left before then, because I would be fearful that had I stayed in that environment with all the propaganda after 9/11, I could be one of those agents in Minneapolis today or something. Well, I'd be kind of old, but still. So I went after my boss at Campo Station, who I knew was the one organizing how we deployed to the field so that he can smuggle drugs into the country. And when he found that out, he threatened me. And I did not back down and said I wanted to go to DEA and FBI. And so that evening, right after working a shift, they told me I had to do a midnight shift. Now, I was a senior patrol agent, and they put me at a very junior level training observation point, just 20 yards off of the border. And at 3 a.m. in the morning, automatic weapon fire comes across from the steel wall. But I can't see it. It's not a bollard steel wall, it's a solid steel wall, and they had cut a hole and they were shooting automatic rounds at me. And they were hitting right outside my driver's door. If they wanted to kill me, they could have. This was a warning. And so I got out of there. I'm calling on the radio for help. All these assholes that I've been talking to all night long about all this traffic and stuff are now silent. And so it was a setup. And as I get away, the boss of the station, who works a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, shows up in the middle of the night and says, "Have you learned your lesson? Because we won't miss next time." And I went home that night, and I told her at the time she was my girlfriend, but we've been together for 25 years. I told my wife, I said, I can't stay there. They've done all this stuff to me, and I see all this stuff going on, but I'm not going to cross this line. What they did is they offered me a promotion to shut my mouth. That's usually how it happens. So you get an early promotion they offered me a supervisory position at sector headquarters, and I said no. And so they said, well, then, we're going to put you back out there or you resign. And so I had to resign. I was very angry about it for quite a long time because I had lost so much of myself and given so much of myself to that agency. And I think I had proven how strong I was to those fucking assholes. And I was just naive. There was never any way they would ever believe me over anybody else, and they don't care about any of that. They just care about the cover-ups. And so I went and hid out in my wife's shop. She had a custom cabinet shop, and I became a professional custom cabinet manufacturer. So I could make a kitchen and all that stuff. But then 14 years later, I always call it like hiding in my white privilege. Because I just lived in that warehouse space and made cabinets for like 14 years. Being angry about all this and slowly losing my mental health because I was suffering from severe PTSD. And in 2015, I had a very serious suicide attempt. That's why my hands are a little funky. And I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and I decided that I probably needed to start talking about my time in the Border Patrol. My wife didn't know I had been raped. She had no idea about most of this stuff. And my writing started simply because it was a therapy for me, and that's how the book came about. And the more I started thinking about it, because I had reached the rank of a senior patrol agent, which is the highest rank you can get before you go into management, and I had done some stints into management, I knew a lot of the secrets. You have to get a good 3 years in before they teach you the secrets. Like, we've been listening to y'all's cell phones without warrants since the 1980s. Back in the day before we got the new phones, what are they, digital, and now the old phones were analog, I think is what they call it. We used to just get scanners from Radio Shack, and we listened to the conversations that Americans are having to be able to make arrest. And nobody cares what we do in the Border Patrol. Nobody stops us. Nobody questions what we say the migrants are doing or saying. simply because everyone's like, well, they crossed illegally, so they committed a crime, so they're a criminal. And then that's the end of the story. And so we end up getting away with so much stuff because our victims are people that most people in the United States don't care about, certainly our politicians and so forth don't care about. So I decided I needed to maybe start talking about it and addressing it and understanding my racism. And at the same time, Donald Trump was running for office the first time. And I was like, when I saw him come down, I mean, as a Southern woman and a former Border Patrol agent, I knew exactly what that man was about. And I thought, the Border Patrol has found their king. This is not going to be good. And so I started talking about it. I started meeting people who worked in the community, and they put up with me and all of my stereotyping and educating me, and so I was certainly fortunate for that. And then eventually Alliance San Diego and the Southern Border Community Coalition, that's two groups over in San Diego, asked me to look at the Anastacio Hernandez Rojas case. And I knew about the critical incident teams, the cover-up teams. They're illegal. The Border Patrol does not have the legal authority from Congress to investigate their own use of force. But what happened is in 1987, they created the first team in San Diego because they were killing so many people and paying so much in restitution to the victims and losing a lot of money, and they didn't want to do that. If you know anything about investigations, then you know that the person who comes to the scene and says, this is evidence, this is not evidence, this is how we're going to collect it, that determines pretty much whether the case is going to go forward or not, right? We learned that in the O.J. Simpson case. You don't collect the evidence correctly, you don't identify the evidence correctly, the case is probably not going to go forward. And so while publicly, it was secret to the public, but to the other law enforcement agencies like your local and state police, FBI, who investigate this, they told them, oh, they're just liaison officers. So if you need a video, you just ask somebody from the set team, we'll get that video. You need to do an interview, we'll get that, and blah, blah, blah. But that's not what they said in our secret law enforcement sensitive use of force manual. What we were told in that manual, which nobody could see, was you call these teams first before you call anybody. And their job was to make sure the scene matched the narrative. And so even in the case of Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez, that we know he was murdered down here in Nogales as he was walking down the street, and the agent shot him from the US side through the fence as he's walking down the street. So in that case, that agent actually, it was unusual. He got tried twice, but he got acquitted twice. Why was he acquitted? The juries on both trials said because the critical incident teams collected the evidence poorly, did not collect all the evidence, and the evidence they did collect, they didn't maintain a chain of command, and it's contaminated. We cannot convict this man. And they also said that the Sonoran State Police failed to collect all of the evidence of the body because the body was in Mexico. And they lost his clothing, and they didn't do a good autopsy report, and it was just a shit show. Well, guess who trains the Sonoran State Police? Border Patrol Critical Incident Team trained the Sonoran State Police, and I have all the documents and the proof of it. They also trained the Baja California State Police. So anytime a shooting or something happened in use of force, and the person made it back into Mexico, or the body dropped into Mexico, well, we've taken care of that, haven't we? And when you look at the oversight agencies, so back in the day, it was under DOJ, but let's just stick to that today. CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility is like their internal affairs, and Border Patrol is under CBP. So technically, they have the authority, CBP, Office of Professional Responsibility, or OPR, has the ability and the legal authority to investigate use of force cases, as does DHS's Office of Inspector General. So we have two different independent, supposedly, internal affairs units. Unfortunately, CBP OPR investigations has been run usually by an ex-Border Patrol agent. The majority of their investigators are ex-agents, and that is done on purpose. And so we make sure that the oversight system is rigged. Then if it gets to the Department of Justice, their U.S. attorneys aren't going to want these cases. Why? Because the SIT team has contaminated the evidence, and there's all these legal questions. It's not a case that they're going to win. So the cases never go anywhere. In the Border Patrol's over 101 years, not a single agent has ever been successfully prosecuted for killing anybody, citizen or not, while on duty. That is insane. That is just insane. Thousands and thousands of people. Because I'm not just talking about shootings. I'm also talking about how they teach us, not in the academies, but in the field, to make them wreck and spin their vehicles and make them roll their vehicles, and it kills 10, 13 more people. And they tell us how to cover it up on the radio. And the way that happens is you're chasing a vehicle and you chase them and you bump them, or they're so hard. And I want to say I never did this because I thought this was disgusting. But a lot of agents will chase them, make them wreck. And as they're standing there watching the victims die, they get on the radio and they say to sector headquarters, because they know that it'll be on tape, oh, this driver is driving kind of erratically. They're speeding and stuff. So I'm going to pull to the side of the road, and I'm terminating the pursuit. I'm turning off my lights and my sirens. That's now all recorded as evidence. But really, the truth is I'm standing right here with the bodies, the people I've just killed. And then after a few minutes, you get back on the radio and you say, I'm going to go down the road and just make sure they didn't crash, because this smuggler, he doesn't care about migrants like we do, right? And then you get on the radio again and go, oh my God, I just found them and they're all dead. Or, oh my God, there's somebody, and I'm going to save this one person's life. And then you can get an award even after you made them crash, quite honestly, if you save someone's life. That is normal Border Patrol behavior. And I don't think many of you are probably surprised by that, especially if you work in this area and living this close to the border. But who is surprised by all of this right now? The rest of America, right? And we're all kind of sitting down here going, I know what that is. You know, when I first saw them ramming cars in LA, I'm like, yep, we do it all the time. And then they'll come out and say, oh, they're the ones that rammed us. And they get away with it all the time because, number one, they haven't had as many cameras on them. And even if they did, or other witnesses were on them, it was always down here on the border, and it was other undocumented people. Well, guess what we do to undocumented people who want to testify against us? We deport them immediately, so they can't testify against us. This is why these agencies glommed on to Donald Trump from the very beginning. It's because they recognized him. Mediocre white man, given everything in his freaking life, and still manages to rise to the top of the power and still feels inadequate. Constantly needs praise and approval. That is the description of a Border Patrol agent to a T. They constantly want you to say how honorable they are. You hear them now. Well, we killed that man because he brought a gun and he was going to kill a lot of people, and we saved all these people is what they're telling people now. Even though our eyes tell us differently. So the Anastasio Hernandez Rojas video, the critical incident video on HBO, it's also on Amazon Prime. That film, if you watch it, you're going to see exactly what they're doing today. They come out first with controlling the narrative. They come out hard in the press controlling the narrative. He was this, she was doing that, she tried to run him over, he did this, blah, blah, blah. and they flood the zone with that. And then they take over the investigation, and they mess with the evidence, and they don't let the local and state police get involved. They have this down to a T. Pattern and practice. I can list the steps and sit there and go, and now they're going to say this, and now they're going to say that, and they do it every single freaking time. One of the problems I think we have in this moment is obviously a lot of our representatives and our senators are very weak and have very little backbone. They have a movie out right now that shows what they are doing, and they will not talk about this film. So we need you to share it with as many people as you can. Make sure you record it in some way so that you always have it and can share it, because it's going to disappear. Unfortunately, at the end of the film, HBO was bought by a right-wing billionaire who's really close friends with Donald Trump. And so they took the film away from the director and the producer. And in the end, they say that Biden disbanded those teams because of our work on the Anastasio case. Technically, that's true. He did disband those teams. He disbanded them in the Border Patrol and had the Border Patrol critical incident team members just simply take off their shirts and resign the Border Patrol, and then they rehired them under CBP's Office of Professional Responsibility and simply legalize them. Democrats are just as bad. I think a lot of you know this. They just don't brag about their brutality. But the policies are no different. And for agents in the field, the policies don't change. It's the same Border Patrol, it's the same CBP, it's the same ICE. It's also important, I want you all to understand that ICE culture is Border Patrol culture. And that's because Border Patrol helped design ICE. And a lot of ex-Border Patrol agents, or a lot of Border Patrol agents resign once their kids get a little older and out of school and their wives want to go back to Ohio or Iowa or wherever they're from. The only way you can do that in immigration is if you go into ICE, okay? So the culture of ICE and Border Patrol is the same. At the same time, it's important to note that since Trump came back in office, he has gotten rid of the heads of CBP and ICE and replaced them with Border Patrol management. That is because Border Patrol is the most ruthless, the most poorly trained, and as you see on your television every night, are willing to beat some ass. They love it. There's no psychological evaluation for anybody entering this agency, and I don't believe for ICE and CBP as well, but I know at least for a fact for the Border Patrol. And the connection between today and the movie that is extremely important that HBO, because they were bought out, refused to address. They also state in the film that the chief at the time of San Diego sector who covered up Anastasio's murder and used these teams to obstruct justice and get away with murder was a chief named Rodney Scott. Do we know where Rodney Scott is today? He's the commissioner of CBP. And so in the film, they don't ever say, this guy's the current commissioner of CBP. They're just like, he's just some old Border Patrol chief and blah, blah, blah. No. He's in charge of these teams that were then moved to CBP to legalize them. So he's in charge of these teams again. So these teams just keep going and going and going. And what makes me so upset is that I've been doing this for 10 years, talking this way and learning all this stuff for at least 10 years. And I used to be on MSNBC a lot in the first Trump administration. But in the Biden administration, they didn't want me talking bad about Biden and his politics. And I don't care what party they're from. I'll talk about them. It doesn't matter. And so then they kind of banned me for a while because I said, what got me banned was, I said, the rhetoric coming out of ICE is the same rhetoric that comes out of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and I think we should be concerned about that. That's what got me kicked off. So now we're here, and now they're calling like crazy, trying to understand what's going on. They all knew. And all of our Democratic senators and representatives, they know. They have created this monster. It's not that the Border Patrol wasn't ruthless, brutal, and racist before 9/11. It's just that those backwoods cops, ruthless, raping their female agents, this and that, and blah, 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 were just given a lot of money. And the people that led that corrupt agency created what you see today. They also, I don't think a person like me could have joined the Border Patrol after 9/11. The only reason why a woman gets hired in the Border Patrol is because the recruiter who's sitting there looking at you thinks you're cute. That's the only reason why. Doesn't mean I wasn't a good agent, but that's the truth of it, right? Ever since 9/11, they've been really trying to target right-wing Christians. I don't even think that the Border Patrol is over 50% Latino anymore. I would be surprised if it is. It feels very white, more white to me than I've seen in a lot of years. And the problem after 9/11 is then you've got kids who even kids who work down here on the border, but they're born after 9/11, and you ask them, what's your impression of the Border Patrol? Most of them will say, well, you know, they have a hard job and they're honorable and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. But then Trump came in and he made them bad. No, they have always been this way, my friends. Yes, you know. We have always been this way, okay? And I feel like if we get out of this moment and everyone says, well, let's go back to the Biden administration or the Obama administration or the Clinton administration version, we have lost the argument. Right. We as border residents right now have the opportunity to say, we see you, Minneapolis. We see you, Chicago. Welcome to the Border Patrol Victims Network. Welcome to our life, right? So we need to be loud. I don't know if we need to go to these communities. I don't know how it needs to be done, but we need to be trying to speak up now in this moment and say that this has always been this way. It has come from both sides of the aisle, and enough. We know damn well what happens when Border Patrol comes to your town. When border militarization comes to your town, it kills your economies. Look at Nogales. Used to be a bustling city on both sides. Now it's dead. When border and immigration comes to your town, it kills your economies. And as we see with the agents getting arrested, it brings criminality. They've had agents arrested in LA. They had agents arrested in Chicago and in many other cities for trying to solicit minors for sex, for pulling their guns on people. When the Border Patrol comes to town, everything is going to fall apart, and they suck up all our money, which is what they're doing right now. I'm hearing also in the news right now, I hear a lot of pundits saying, well, these agents, you know, when they're down on the border, they're dealing with drug dealers and they're dealing with cartel, and so they're used to a war mentality and a military frame of mind, and so they're poorly trained, and this is the training, okay? This is the training. And this is less about immigration, as we're starting to see, and more about trying to keep us from voting in the future. It's immigration, which is great for them, because they love that. But the intent and the infrastructure that they are creating in these cities when they go from city to city, they're not leaving. They're creating infrastructure. And they're creating infrastructure so that when we start voting, that then they can walk up and go, well, I don't think you're a U.S. citizen, Leno. Let's go check your citizenship. Because the only way to check somebody's citizenship is to ask them. And then I determine if you're lying or not as an agent. It's not innocent until proven guilty in immigration. You have to prove that you're innocent. You have to prove that you're a U.S. citizen or that you're a legal resident and allowed to be here. I'm sorry? whether you're guilty or innocent, you're allowed to be here legally in the United States according to what they determine. So your guilt is that you came into the United States either legally and are out of status, so therefore they determine that you're a criminal. What?
That wouldn't take citizenship.
That wouldn't take citizenship.
I don't understand your question. In an immigration agent's mind, if you're here illegally, then you're a criminal, and you have to prove that you're a citizen. I know that, but they don't care. If your argument is with me, you're picking the wrong argument. Okay?
We're going to have Q&A afterward for questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your question.
So we have a unique opportunity right now. These agencies have been lying for decades that the border is out of control. There was no invasion. They just refused to process for 4 years. Anybody who opened the processing system would have a lot of people come. That's not an invasion. That's just you started to do your freaking job. And I always say, like, an asylum system is essential to national security. It is in a country like ours. What do we want more than anything? We want to know who's coming to our country. We want to inspect them. You can't inspect them if you don't have any way to inspect them, if you don't have a system to inspect them with. They're never going to open this system again. That's the goal. And then the other goal is eventually to take your mayor's and your governor's power over your police and completely strip all that and do what they call verticalizing. So they're also talking about getting rid of DHS. So then all of the police, from federal all the way down, are underneath the control of the President of the United States. Yes, that's exactly what they plan on doing. And I think a large part of the reason why we don't see our state and local police fighting back and the mayors calling them to fight back more, even though they say they are, we haven't seen them arresting these agents for their use of force violations, is because since 9/11, they've been having these fusion centers and they train your state and your local police. They give them resources. They give them guns. They give them lots and lots of funding. And a lot of our cops are on their side. But I want to tell you, there are way more of us than there are of them. And every day, we are getting more and more people on our side with what they are doing. I'm sorry that these other communities are suffering, but as a border resident, I say it's about time. It's about time you see what's going on down here. I'm tired of hearing you telling everybody down here just to obey their orders and everything will be fine, and vilifying every migrant that comes across the border. It's still legal to cross the border anywhere and request and try and find a Border Patrol agent and be processed for asylum. That is not a crime. It is not a crime. And even if you do cross illegally, it's a misdemeanor. It is a civil misdemeanor. Immigration law is civil law. But I want you to understand one more thing. How much time do I have? I'm good? Oh. For a lot of these agents, one of the things they've done after 9/11, and specifically once Turning Point USA got into the high schools, they are recruiting from Turning Point USA and groups like this, okay? And they're not all the agents are like this, but a significant percentage of them. I don't know about Tucson, but in San Diego, we have churches that cater to Border Patrol agents, that teach them that they're heroes. And recently, Chief Bovino that's leading this, little Chief Bovino, he might be my height, I'm kind of short. But he recently spent a lot of American taxpayer money on a film called Isaiah 6:8. So if you don't know Isaiah 6:8, it's from the Old Testament. And Isaiah goes to God, and he's before God, and he's just, oh my God, I can't believe I'm before God. Oh crap, I've committed a lot of sin in my life. I can't talk to God. I'm a sinful man, blah, blah, blah. So a cherub comes and cleanses his soul, and now he's all good, right? So he's all good, and he says, what do I need to do for you, God? And God says, well, I need to lay waste to this city. It's like a Sodom, some kind of Sodom and Gomorrah city, but a different name. And he's like, okay, so what do you want me to do? I want you to lay waste to it. I want you to kill everybody. I want you to kill all the crops. Just take everything to the ground, burn it all to the ground. And he goes, well, for how long do I do this? And he goes, when you're done with everybody, and then you think you've gotten everybody, then you go back and you do it again. And what you need to do is you need to learn to close your ears and your eyes and turn away from the violence and the things that you're going to have to do, so that holy seeds and holiness can then grow and plant and grow there. What a God. So in this video, he has an agent in his Border Patrol outfit, and he's sitting in the back of a truck, and he's like, Isaiah 6:8, blah, 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 blah. So he's reading it. And then they show the agents passing a chemical ammunition weapon to each other. That you have to be a warrior for God. This is what they teach them. This is what Charlie Kirk was teaching them in those churches on the southern border. A lot of them believe this stuff. Bovino believes this stuff. They believe they are cleansing this nation and making it fertile for the new Christian nation that they want this to be about. I want you to understand that. And Rodney Scott feels that way as well. Whether or not they truly believe it or not, I don't know. Whether it's just a justification, I don't know. This is another reason why these immigration agencies really love Donald Trump. They see him, obviously he's a failed man, he's all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. But overall, he's going to bring in the Christian nation that we need, and so we will use him for what we need. This is how they view this.
And they look the other way.
And they look the other way. So, we have an opportunity right now as southern border residents who know what is really happening to not only teach the people in this community that maybe have closed their eyes and their ears and turned away to the trauma that people have faced down here for generations. I mean, none of this is new. I just happen to be an ex-agent with a white face who writes relatively decently, right? Let's be honest. You all been doing this probably longer than I have. I know you have. So we have the opportunity to educate each other. We have the opportunity to educate these other cities and help them to see that what happens down here, this 100-mile zone area where we don't have all of our civil rights down here, all of our constitutional rights, that needs to stop. Either the Constitution covers all Americans in the United States and a lot of people who are just present in the United States, because as we know, the 14th Amendment says all persons, not all citizens, get due process, right? So either the Constitution is the Constitution and it matters all over the United States, or it doesn't. And I think it's a good time for us to start demanding that, to demand that these checkpoints go down so that we don't have to sit there and violate our own Fifth Amendment rights of uttering a sentence of, yeah, I'm a citizen, or no, I'm not a citizen, which could incriminate us. We have that Fifth Amendment right not to make utterances that might incriminate us. So why do we have to go through a checkpoint to go to the grocery store and state our citizenship? We have a lot of opportunity right now in all this trauma and in this violence. And the other thing that I want to say is they are doing more to teach white people in Americans' community than anything ever could. They are realizing in Minneapolis, they are realizing in cities all across the country what I had to learn from my friends of color down here and stuff about community and how that matters. and they are helping to bring us together in this country. They are helping some people on the right finally start seeing this for what it is. And unfortunately, it takes the killing of white people. It takes white faces dying for them to get there. But I think we have a better chance of getting there than we ever have before. And so I'm going to keep talking about it. I will keep doing my part in telling the secrets of the Border Patrol and trying to help your communities. And I hope you all keep fighting as well. So.
So, for those that don't know, Jen traveled from California to be here this week in Tucson. So, again, just enormously grateful for her being here, sharing her experiences with you. We are going to do a Q&A. We're going to do probably about a 5 to 10 minute break. You can get the blood flowing again. It's a little cold. But again, you'll have an opportunity to ask your questions of Jen, and she's graciously offered to spend more time with us to answer those questions. But we will take a break. One quick footnote I wanted to add, we talked about this the other day, Jen and I. The Border Patrol came into being, I think it was 1924, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And the founder of the Border Patrol was a high-ranking Texas Ranger. I'm from Texas, and I take these things very seriously and very personally. The Texas Rangers, and I'm sure most of you know this, have quite a history of massacring and lynching Mexicans along the border. It was that culture that was transferred into the Border Patrol in 1924 and continues to this day. So, and the lying, and the impunity, and the ultimate in violence and racism. So, again, thank you everyone. Mo, you've got...
have a Justice for All petition if no one's, if they haven't seen. So there's a Justice for All for Pima County petition, and if you want to sign it, she'll have it over here. It is trying to get it passed so that there can be legal representation for all people in immigration court. Do you have a question about that?
No. My book is 3.5 years old. That's how old this is for me.
My book is 3.5 years old, and you can get it anywhere online. Bookshop has it. That's a good one to get. And then I also did the Audible for it, so that's me talking. The film is Critical Incident, and the book is Against the Wall, My Journey. And you need to put Jen Budd, JENNBUDD, because apparently a lot of porno titles are
Keeping it light, thank you, Jen. Okay, so, little break. Again, I want this to be a celebration as well. We're gonna have a little more music. We'll resume in about 10 minutes. Feel free to mingle, do your thing. We got food, I think we got drink and coffee, and then we'll have our Q&A. Thank you.